Hello, welcome to Queer Hacks. My name is Rob Ulrich, and I am teaching the workshop on applying to grad school, how to write a personal statement. So, to start off, again, my name is Rob Ulrich. I'm a fourth year biogeochemistry PhD student, and I'm also a third year graduate writing consultant. The outline of this workshop today is going to be going over the purpose of personal statements, before then going over the structure of a personal statement, and then we'll go over the writing process, and then also we'll end on some tips. I hope you find this helpful. So, what is the point of a personal statement? Personal statements are an opportunity for you to provide reviewers with a glimpse into who you are as an applicant. Why do you have potential to succeed in graduate school? What unique perspectives and experiences do you bring, et cetera, et cetera. And so, in doing this, you can think about some very broad questions like what experiences have led you to this point of wanting to apply to graduate school? What motivates you? What kind of experiences do you have? What kind of science do you want to do? What kind of career do you want to have? And also, why did you choose this particular graduate program to apply to? There are different types of personal statements, and different schools or programs will ask you to submit one or more of them in a given application, and some of them will even combine the different types together. These include, but aren't absolutely limited to, personal history statement, diversity statements, and also your statement of purpose. Each of them have slightly different focuses, but overall cover the same themes and have the same structures. They just focus on different aspects of you. So, personal history statements typically focus on your personal growth and experiences. Who are you as a person? Diversity statements usually want you to talk about like what identities are the most salient to you. How have they impacted your life? Do they influence the work that you want to do in the future? And then statements of purpose are more science, career, grad school centric. What specific research, work, or teaching experiences have led you, or have you had, and how have they impacted you, and like what you want to do? Regardless of the focus of the contents, they will each have the overall same structure. And so the general structure for personal statements for graduate school applications are going to be about half a page to a page, or alternatively pasting it into text boxes in an online application. Despite this, they're each going to have the same overall structure, starting with like a hook and synopsis of the statement, followed by your motivation and or preparation slash experiences, and then finally you're going to end on the fit of the program, so how you fit into the program, what you bring to the program, as well as why that program is valuable to you and your future goals. So the beginning is going to be the hook and synopsis. And so the way I want you to go about this is really trying to think about like, if the application reviewers were to only read this first paragraph, would they get the gist of what you want them to know about you? The people reviewing your application are going to be also reviewing dozens of other ones as well. So especially if you don't have a connection or relationship to a faculty member in the program that you're applying to, you want to make this very precise and focused. You can think of it as an abstract or summary, condensing down the other components of your statement into one short paragraph at the beginning. And so because of that, I would suggest that you work on it last. The next parts are the motivation and preparation and experiences. So these are two sections that are kind of combined or can be like intertwined. It kind of just depends on how you decided to write your statement and what organization makes sense for what you're trying to highlight. And so in this section, you're very much just talking about like what experiences you have, what experiences have influenced you or impacted you, and how have they affected your trajectory in like a relevant sense. So how have they affected how or what you want to become or what you want to do. And so this is going to be the main content of your statement. Yeah. We'll talk about this a bit more when we're talking about writing. And then lastly, the fit and future goals. Why this specific program? How does it align with what you want to do next and in the future? So this is a small but very important bit. Why does it make sense for you to go to grad school? How does graduate school align with what you want to go on to do in the future? For each statement that you're submitting an application to, you'll also want to incorporate why this specific program makes sense for you. What about the program, the resources, or the people at the school aligns with your goals? If you want to or are able to, you can also consider including what you're bringing to the program, be it connections, experience, tools, etc. That would additionally help you springboard you into being a successful graduate student and as well as help you achieve your future goals. Now that you know the overall structure of a personal statement, we can start to talk about the process of actually writing one. And so usually what people have the most problems with is usually the problem of like a blank page and not really knowing where to start. And so I think it's usually helpful to try to brainstorm potential things to talk about. And I think one of the most useful tools, at least for me, of brainstorming is creating concept maps that really let you sort of just word vomit words onto a page, as well as connect and organize them. And one way to do mind maps is with pen and paper, but you can also use this website called mindmaster.com. It should be linked here on the slide. And it's essentially just a website that allows you to create mind maps within your web browser. So when you're making mind maps, you want to dump everything you're thinking about onto the page. Since personal statements are about you, I would put yourself in the middle and then have some branches coming off with larger topics that you might want to discuss in a personal statement. And these are not limited to leadership, advocacy, outreach, research, personal history, mentoring, etc. And while you're putting this together, try not to worry too much about where you're putting things. You can always rearrange them later. It's also not uncommon for a particular experience to belong to multiple categories. Also, you can use this similar exercise when thinking about the fit paragraphs for your statements for each of the programs that you're applying to. If you're watching this asynchronously, I encourage you to take this opportunity to pause the video and take a few minutes, maybe 15 to 30 minutes, to make your own mind map. And you can, by the end of this workshop, you'll have a working draft of your personal statement. After you've created your mind map and have some discussion items, now I want you to free write about each of the items that you put into your mind map, or however you decided to brainstorm. Allow yourself to free write at least 1 to 3 sentences, and also resist the urge to self-edit right now. Being nitpicky about wording or structure at this point is inefficient, and you don't know if those changes are actually going to make it into the final draft anyway. Just get the thoughts and memories onto the paper and try to be as specific as possible. If you're watching this asynchronously, feel free to pause the video and take some time to do this. Now that we have some discussion items and we know the overall structure, we can begin the process of drafting. Since this will be the first draft, you do not need to worry about how it sounds yet. We're going to address that during revisions. Depending on the type of personal statement that you're trying to write, think about what you want the application reviewers to know about you after reading your statement. For example, if it's a statement of purpose, you'll probably want to focus on your journey and development as a scientist or engineer and why graduate school makes sense for you. If it's a diversity statement, focus on your identities and how they've influenced you, how you navigate the world, especially as it pertains to your development and goals as a scientist, engineer, educator, moving forward. The next step would be then using your mind map to then make a rough outline of your topics that you think will be relevant to talk about for this particular statement. Paste some of the sentences that you free wrote from your free writing under their corresponding topics in the outline, and then jot down some talking points for your fit and future goals, as well as your hook and synopsis paragraphs. They don't need to be near their final stages yet at all. You're going to be the only person looking at this draft. And now that you have some words on the page, the hardest part is over, and we can move on to talk about revisions. Going through school, you're usually taught how to write in steps that treat writing as a finite, linear procedure. Rarely are you taught that writing is a cyclical process of writing and revision. This includes things you might know as editing, or refer to as editing and reorganizing and using better words. It's all revision. You already have words on the page, and that's the hardest part of writing for most people. So from here on out, we're going to be revising your statements, honing and focusing it to effectively tell your story and communicate the information that you want the application reviewers to know. To revise efficiently, we can divvy up the revision process into tiers. Each tier denotes the scale at which we're going to be looking at the statement. Tier 1, we're going to be looking at the entire statement, its structure and organization. The overall message is being conveyed and emphasized. This goes down in scale, paragraphs, sentences, all the way down to just your choice of words. The ordering of the tiers marks the most efficient way to go about revisions, because during larger scale revisions, such as looking at the whole statement, you might completely overwrite or make irrelevant any changes that you've made at a smaller scale, like the sentence or paragraph level. Then, once you've gone through each of the tiers, then you've done an entire set of revisions, and it's then up to you whether the draft is at a stage at which you would like to share it with others to procure some feedback, or if you should go through another round of revisions. Each tier in itself is also a cyclical process. Right now, your draft is probably pretty bare, since it's hardly more than an outline at this point. Read through it and fill in the gaps between talking points you established with the first outline. Each talking point should be about a paragraph. And if you try to communicate too many things within a paragraph, then the reader can get confused and your message might get diluted. So just elaborate as much as you need to right now, and don't be too stringent on the length. We can always cut it later. After you've done that, then read through your statement again. What points stand out to you? Next to each paragraph, write down the point that it communicates. Does the content of the paragraph align with the point that you've just written or what you intended? Now step back and look at the overall statement. Do the order of the paragraphs and points make sense? Do the ideas of each paragraph flow to the next one? Are there gaps or jumps between some ideas? If so, what are they? Is that information relevant or important to the intents and purposes of the statement? If so, write it in. Again, don't be too stringent about the length. We can always cut later. Repeat this cycle until you're satisfied with the contents of your statement. The next tier has us look at each of the paragraphs individually. From the previous tier, you already should know what the point you are trying to make is. You should know the point that you're trying to make with each paragraph already. So you should be making sure that all of the information that you're presenting in each paragraph helps bring you to that point or supports that point in some way. The steps here are similar to that of Tier 1, but instead of assessing the value or point of each paragraph in the statement, you're assessing... you're assessing the value and point of each paragraph in the statement. The second to last tier has us look at each of the individual sentences. From the previous tier, you should already know what the point of each paragraph you're trying to make is, and so you should be making sure that all of the information that you're presenting in each paragraph is supported by each of the sentences that you're writing. You can sort of think of it in like a Marie Kondo sense, like, does this sentence add value? If it doesn't, you can probably delete it without it affecting your paragraph at all. I also want you to note that information being presented at the beginning of a sentence typically causes a reader to think that that is what the sentence is going to be about. You usually want this to be old information that you've already presented before in the paragraph or statement. Information being presented at the end of a sentence, however, causes a reader to think that that is the point that you're trying to stress in that sentence. This general idea can also translate to the positioning within paragraphs as well as the location within the greater statement overall. If a sentence does not flow but it contains information that adds value, think about how you can rearrange that sentence to make it flow better. Note what information is coming before it and what information is being presented after it. Again, this logic can be applied to the positioning and wording of paragraphs as well. The final tier looks at each of the individual words you've chosen. I'd argue that while this can affect your overall statement, it's probably the least important tier, especially given the genre that we are writing is very colloquial, as opposed to the formal writing like a research paper or policy brief. And now that you've gone through a whole round of revisions, go through your statement again. Again, using the tiers as levels at which to look at your statement. Once the statement has reached a point where you think it's satisfactory or you think you've been staring at it for too long, mark the draft with a number and send it off to friends, families, and colleagues for feedback. The wide audience will ensure that you get a variety of feedback from people who know you in different contexts. Their feedback might be great or might be useless, but either way, their notes will help to get you to think about your statement in a new light and also see how it resonated with other people. Were the points that you thought you were making actually conveyed? What qualities did they pull from your statement? And is that the same as like what you want the reviewers to get from your statement? Lastly, we're just going to end on some tips to keep in mind as you're writing or preparing your personal statements. Remember that this is an application document. Why are the things you're sharing important for the reviewers to know? Why do they make you a candidate with potential? Don't overthink writing the statement. Be yourself and let your personality shine through. Write what is true to you and your experience. That's the best way to avoid sounding cliche. Try to get as much feedback as possible. It's also especially important to get feedback from faculty since they're the main audience that you're going to be catering your statements towards. If you have a research advisor, what do they look for in personal statements from applicants? Lastly, you should be making sure that you share your statements with your letter writers. It's especially good if you haven't worked with them directly in a while because it'll update them with what you've been up to as well as the things you're trying to do. It can also be helpful to ask them to discuss certain things in their letter that you might not have had time to elaborate on in your statement. Thanks for watching this. If you have any questions or need somebody to look at your statements, feel free to reach out to me either through Twitter or through email. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can.